Okay. Thank you everyone for joining. So hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Offir Gutelzom. I was born and raised in Israel, and I now live in Palo Alto with my wife and two boys. After selling my company, my startup, and moving to the US, I never stopped working to strengthen the US-Israeli alliance. Believing deeply in the shared values of both nations as liberal democracies. And this is one of the many reasons why I co-founded Israeli Americans for Kamala. As an Israeli American, I know that my family's safety in Israel is directly tied to the strength of this alliance. And the north part of the country right now under the attack of Hezbollah terrorist organization. This is one of the reasons I'm endorsing Kamala Harris for president. Her proven commitment to Israel's security, especially during these critical times, is the Biden-Harris administration has remained firm in its support for Israel, from military aid to the diplomacy that can prevent the escalation of war. As an Israeli tech entrepreneur, I understand the importance of political stability and strong international partnerships. With Kamala Harris' clear-eyed leadership, we will continue to bolster this alliance, making sure Israel stays safe while upholding democratic values. Given the rising anti-Semitism and extremism in the US, not to mention the catastrophe in the Middle East, an alternative to Harris threatens our identities and safety as Jews and as Israelis. We need a leader who understands these stakes and stands with us. Kamala Harris is that leader. I urge you to join me in supporting her candidacy to ensure the future safety and the security of our families, both here and in Israel. So we are going to start the evening. I'm going to pass it to David Meyers, and then to Kathy, and then to Ilan, and then to our speakers. And thank you everyone again for joining.
Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you, Offir. Good evening. I'm David Meyers. I was the captain in the IDF Naval Branch and lived on a kibbutz in the Negev. During my service, I participated in testing the Arrow missile, a key element in Israel's strategic defense. On October 7th, several family members of mine escaped the horrors, and some have yet to return to their homes. I arrived in Israel a few days later to support them and to volunteer with Brothers and Sisters in Arms civilian response in the Gaza envelope. And since then, I've advised the Navy's Chief of Operations on freedom of navigation issues. I co-founded Israeli Americans for Kamala out of deep concern for Israel's security and my familiarity with the importance of the US alliance to it. Our goal with these endorsements is to show Jewish voters that Israelis who understand Israel's security needs and have a real stake in its future are confident that Vice President Harris is the president we need now, and that a Trump presidency is a risk that we dare not take. Beyond the endorsements, we aim to equip supporters with information that will help them to have conversations with voters who may be uncertain or confused by all the noise. Very simply, Kamala Harris is the only presidential candidate that the Jewish community can count on to safeguard Israel, fight anti-Semitism, and combat Iran. We will share key messages that you can use after the call and follow up with additional content and tools for you to use and share widely. Thank you, and passing it to Kathy.
Hold on, Kathy, just a second.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. 1 second, sorry, I lost my. Hi, everyone. My name is Kathy Goldberg. I was born and raised in Chicago. Sorry, that was.
Did we lose Kathy? I think we did. Okay, as expected, if something would go wrong. Ilan, oh, hold on. Ilan, we can pass to you if that's okay. Okay,
Great, sure. Not a problem. I'm sure we
just
can
a
come back.
second.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. And yeah, go ahead.
No, thank you very much, Offir. And hi, my name is Ilan Goldenberg. I'm here in a number of different capacities. My first capacity is as the Director of Jewish Outreach and a Policy Advisor to the Harris Walls campaign. My other capacity here is that I was actually born in Israel. I lived in Israel until I was 8. My parents, they're American. My mom actually from a Louisiana family that came to the United States in the 1820s. It's kind of a rarity, Louisiana Jews in the Bayou. And my father from New Jersey. But they met at a Jewish summer camp. Then they made Aliyah. I was born in Jerusalem. I lived there until I was 8. And really inspired me after we left and came back to the United States to pursue a career focusing on foreign policy, focusing on Israel's security, focusing on the U.S.-Israel relationship, trying to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, counter Iran. And that's what I've done throughout my career, including in my last job as the Middle East advisor to Vice President Harris on October 7th and in the months before and after October 7th. So I thought what I would do is just tell you a little bit about what I saw, why I'm such a strong believer and supporter of hers, and why I think she will make the best next president of the United States. So as I said, I was with staffing her on October 7th and in the days after. And it was very clear to me from the beginning what her North Star was. She was very clear. Israel was attacked on October 7th. Israel has a right to defend itself. And we're going to help Israel defend itself. And America will stand by Israel's side, as we did, as we continue to, as President Biden did, as Vice President Harris did. A couple of specific things I'll say about her. One is she has been on basically every single call that Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Biden has done. Now, let me explain what that actually means. It means she prioritizes the issue. We try, frankly, at the White House, you don't want the president and the vice president doing the same thing at the same time. You don't want your two best athletes in the same position on the field. You want them doing different things so you can do as much as possible. But when it came to these discussions, she insisted that she always be there and always drop what she was doing to join not just the discussion with Prime Minister Netanyahu and those exchanges, but also the national security team meetings that came before and after that, where so many decisions and deliberations got made, because this was a priority for her. And you could just tell. And, you know, her schedule's pretty crazy and busy, but always, including the day before she accepted the nomination at the Democratic National Convention, she took a significant amount of time out of her day to join one of these calls and to participate in these deliberations. The other thing I'll say about her, and this is a personal story, I actually staffed her and helped prepare her for her first meeting with American families of the hostages, American hostages, right? Families of the American hostages. There's about 2 weeks after October 7th. Very hard time for everyone, of course. And I remember walking in to brief her. And, you know, we did what we usually do. You have the materials, you have the background on people, you start to have a conversation with her. She asks questions, and she just stops us after about a minute. And she says, stop. This is fundamentally different. I need you to go back and I need you to find every single piece of information that you have on these people. And even more importantly, every piece of information you have about their loved ones in Gaza, because when I go into that meeting, I just need to know as much as I possibly can, because that's what I owe it to these families. And they need to just see that. They need to know, and I am going to do that, because that's the only way I can seriously engage on this. And for me, that was just a very powerful moment in terms of teaching me just who she is and how she thinks about these things, how deeply she cares about Israel, how deeply she cares about people, how dedicated she is, to bringing the hostages home, to keeping Israel secure, to ending the suffering in Gaza. That is what I believe she stands for, and that is why I just trust her to be our next president, to sit at that most important chair, behind that most important desk, and make those big decisions that are going to affect millions of people. So thank you again for joining joining this call today. Thank you to Israeli Americans for Kamala, for everything that you are doing. Thank you for your support. And let's continue to go and make sure that Kamala Harris is the next president of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilan. And we'll go back and hopefully it will work this time. Replace. Okay, Kathy, you are on. Here you go.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Ilan. My name is Kathy Goldberg. I don't know how much you heard before. I was born and raised in Chicago and lived in Israel for many years, where I met my husband and gave birth to our first two children. I've worked in the high-tech and nonprofit sector in both Israel and the States, and have been actively involved in political advocacy in both countries for many years. This past year has presented us all with unimaginable challenges, crises, tragedies, and some glimmers of hope too. As we follow the news in Israel tonight, today, and every day, we have many hopes and worries for our future, deeply rooted in the values that these two countries have shared for so many years. It was just a week ago today when we first came together to create Israeli Americans for Kamala. We founded this amazing group to publicly, clearly, and unequivocally endorse Kamala Harris based on our deep love and grave concern for the future of Israel and the United States. Since then, we've been overwhelmed by an outpouring of support from all over the United States, Israel, and indeed all over the world, all sharing the same urgent feeling that we must speak up at this critical time and to not let others speak for us, over us, or undermine us. We are Israeli Americans from all walks of life, including business people, rabbis, professors, activists, mothers, fathers, grandparents, and so many more. And we are thrilled that all of you could join us tonight as we declare our strong endorsement of Kamala Harris for President of the United States. One last thing, this is a fast-growing group, all organic, and if you haven't already, please join us on WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever works for you. This will be the first call of many, and we will build on all this momentum between now and Election Day, because this election is so critical to all of us and our families and friends, near and far. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. This was amazing. We're going to move to my good friend, Rabbi Amichai Lau-Lavie, who is calling us from New York, I think, or maybe he's still in LA.
New York.
You can unmute.
I am. Good evening, Offir, my friend. Hi, Kathy. My name is Amichai Lau-Lavie. Erev Tov. Good evening, friends. I am an Israeli-American rabbi, founder of the Rab Shul community here in New York City. I'm very proud and very honored to be with you tonight with colleagues and friends, Israelis for Harris. I'm actually right now downtown New York at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial for the Holocaust, at a very moving event celebrating Jewish educators nationwide. And I stepped out to be with you with this great responsibility of speaking up urgently for the values that I believe must help all of us make a difference in a world so hurting at this time and in a country that needs great leaders. I just got back from my 10th trip to Israel since October 7th. I've been going back and forth to be in solidarity with my family and friends, many on the front lines, nephews, cousins, friends of all ages, showing up to support the work tirelessly done by so many to heal the hurting, and so many who refuse to give up on hope, give up on peace, give up on justice for all the people of our beloved land. Back and forth as I travel, and it's been a jet lag on many proportions, I keep hearing people telling me again and again, all ages, all backgrounds, the guys I was in the IDF with, my 94-year-old mother, my kids here in New York, what would it look like to have leaders who care? What would it look like at this time and in the future to have leaders who show up from the heart, who love Israel and believe in the Jewish story of survival, who really care that there is a future that honors humanity, that celebrates courage, that walks the talk and charts a new path of dignity, democracy, and decency for all. It's coming from the hurt, and it's coming with a lot of hope. And so I know a leader who I believe in, who I think can help us chart that path. I had the honor of meeting Vice President Harris in her home in DC, together with Doug Emhoff during the first Hanukkah in their home, when they celebrated the first menorah in the vice presidential mansion and proudly pointed to the mezuzah that they just hung up. Again, a first. I was there with Jewish leaders from all walks of life who were impressed and inspired by the joy, by the dedication, by the warmth. You can't dial that in. You know what it's like when someone like Kamala is there with Doug to show what a Jewish home is, new, different, and exactly what we need, coming from love and with a vision of real care. A dear friend of mine is the rabbi in Washington, D.C., where Doug often goes to pray. And in the last month, and the last months, has often shared with me how the warmth and the care, both of Mr. Emhoff and the vice president, is felt constantly. Phone calls and attention, not just on the big public events, but privately behind the scenes. I know she cares for Israel, for the Jewish people, for the threat of anti-Semitism, for the real future of hope for our people and all people. So the past has shown us, this past year has shown us what dedication looks like, what standing by the values looks like, what supporting Israel looks like. I, as an Israeli American, as a father, as a rabbi, have no doubt that at times of crisis and at times of hopeful tranquility, this is the leader that will move us forward. She's motivated by moral values, by tikkun olam, by changing the world for better. She's done that. She's doing that. She will be doing that. And vision, clarity, love, strategy, joy, hope. This is what we need right now. This is the leader that I will hope will help us build a better world. And I hope you join me in making history this coming election. What other path do we have? Forward with joy and with hope. Toda rabba. Thank you very much. I hope to join you many times. Laila tov.
Thank you, Amichai. We're moving now to Roni Sagy. Let me replace spotlight. Roni, you're with us.
Yes, good evening. I'm just off the plane. I just arrived in New York. Otherwise, I'm living in California. So my name is Roni Sagy. I was born in Israel, and for the past 40 years or so, I've been living in California and practicing law and doing different things and worrying about the democracy in Israel. Both my parents were Holocaust survivors, and in their teenage years, they left Europe and came to Israel after World War II. No other country was ready to take them, and they invested all their might, talent, and goodwill in building a liberal democratic Israel. And from a very young age, my father, who was a teacher and later on a professor, was teaching me what democracy is all about, how important it is to have three independent branches: the legislative branch, the judiciary, and the executive power, and they need to be separate. So as all of you know, especially over the past, I would say 2 decades, but especially over the past 2 years, we observe how the democracy in Israel is disintegrating. and it is becoming more and more, or it's stepping toward an authoritarian, or at least that's the way it looks to me, regime. The October 7 event highlighted the difficulties of running a country under these conditions. I have extended family members that were killed during October 7, kidnapped, some of them returned, and some of them did not. All of that is to say that in order to support a liberal democracy in Israel, we need to have a liberal democracy here. It's very, very important to have it. So while everybody talked about how wonderful Kamala Harris is, and I totally agree with you, I think that we need to have a few words about the other option. The other option does not promote democracy as we know it. The alternative just last week said specifically, if I lose, it's because of the Jews. The other alternative is hanging out with Holocaust deniers, with Tucker Carlson that believed that Hitler was a great person that had good ways to deal with the Jews, or with Nick Fuentes and other people. I do not need to go on and on about that. But most importantly, he doesn't have any set of values or policies that he endorses. He basically goes with the highest bidder or with the person that will flatter him more than others. So if Putin will demand something, he will do it. Or if Mohammed bin Salman will pay more for something, he will do that. We have seen it time and time again. So we are so lucky to have Kamala Harris run against him and say, this is what I believe. I believe in supporting Israel. I believe in supporting democracy. I believe in supporting freedoms. I believe in supporting women, minorities, all the people that Trump marginalizes and will not take into account. So it's time for us to have such a strong leader who will also make history and will lead us on a good path to a good democracy. I must say also on a personal level, I did not work directly with Kamala Harris when she was in California, the Attorney General, but I worked with her office. And I was thoroughly impressed by her smarts, by her discipline, by her good strategic and tactical thinking. And I have nothing but excellent things to say about her. So I wish other people would do the same as we do and vote for her.
Ronnie, thank you so much. And we are moving to Jeremy Levin, who I know is calling us all the way from Australia, even though he's not based there. So Jeremy, you are on.
Offir, thank you. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for the invitation to talk. I'm an Israeli-American, a physician, scientist, and for those of you who don't know, previous CEO of TEVA Pharmaceutical, which is an Israeli company that actually provided 1 in 6 pills to all Americans. Today, I want to show you why I believe Kamala Harris will lead America to greater strength and unity as president. For me, her presidency is critical to Israel and indeed to Western democracy. Kamala Harris will fight fiercely for reproductive rights and access to reproductive health care, which is so vital to family well-being. As a doctor, I know she understands medical disasters caused by the loss of these rights over the last months. She'll work tirelessly to restore them because a woman's right to control her body, for me and for all of us who believe in democracy, is essential for justice and equality. As regards defending Israel, the vast majority of Israelis know that Kamala Harris will stand by Israel with unwavering commitment. She understands the importance of democracy, justice, and freedom, values which are shared by Israel and America. Harris won't waver in supporting Israel's right to defend itself, knowing that defending democracy abroad strengthens it at home. As regards truth and unity, Kamala Harris tells the truth and promotes hope, while, as we all know, her opponent lies and spreads fear and division. She knows unity is key to solving our challenges and building a future full of opportunity. Harris speaks honestly about the hard work ahead, but she also understands the brighter days that await us and when we all unite as a nation. As a CEO who's led thousands, I know the impact she will have on the economy. I know Kamala Harris will bring hope to families. She will support small businesses, expand tax credits, and make housing affordable, giving families an opportunities to build a better future. Harris believes America's strength comes from uplifting everyone. Now, moving to something so passionately important to all Jewish Americans. I am a Jew. I passionately believe Kamala Harris will stand against anti-Semitism and all hate. She knows that fighting hatred means defending the values of tolerance and justice that make our country great. Harris will ensure Jewish Americans and all communities live free from fear and discrimination. This message is not for those that believe. The message is for those that don't believe, those who doubt for 1 minute that Israeli Americans and Israelis support her. Kamala Harris leads with purpose, defends the truth, and believes in the bright future we can create together. And that's why I will be voting for Kamala, and I encourage you to do the same. Thank you all, and I look to success in November.
Thank you, Jeremy, so much. We are now going to move to a recording by Rabbi Susan Silverman from Jerusalem. So bear with me. Share screen. Where is my share? Oh, here it is.
Hi, I'm Rabbi Susan Silverman. I live in Israel with my family, my husband, and our 5 kids. And we are absolutely supporting Harris and Walz, 100%. First of all, the other guy would give carte blanche to our most radical extremists in Israel to run rampant. Second of all, as the security people here that we've spoken with and hung out with have said that in the security circles, they say that if Donald Trump is elected, that we're one divorce away from losing the U.S. support. I mean, like he could just dump us if that works best for him personally, politically. He's a man who loves Putin who is allied with Iran. Like this, it's insanity to support Donald Trump. There are a million reasons that we're supporting Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. One of them actually is Israel. We are much safer with sanity than with insanity, with people who are thoughtful and strategic and not someone who's impulsive and will share state or international secrets over a dinner in order to show off that he knows them. It would be a nightmare. I am begging you, as a mom whose kids have been in the army, as someone who lives here with all of the dangers around us, a Trump presidency would undermine us internally and externally. A Harris-Walz presidency would bring much greater stability and security, and we could move forward. I'm begging you, help us elect Harris-Walz. Thank you.
Well, I wish I was able to thank Rabbi Susan personally, which we will do. We're moving now to Dotan, my good friend Dotan from Atlanta. Spotlight. Can you hear me?
I really appreciate the opportunity to be asked to follow up after a rabbi. That's like rule number one to not do. So thank you. Laila tov, everyone. My name is Dotan Zebrowitz Harpak. I live in the swing state of Georgia. I grew up mostly in Haifa, a city that, as many of you know, sadly was bombed earlier today. And I have spent many years volunteering and working with Jewish organizations, camps, and youth movements, both in Israel and here in the United States. And since I was very young, I always really cared about making this a better world and have been very involved in politics, both local and national. For the past decade, I have worked with the gun violence prevention movement. So obviously, I have many, many reasons to support the Harris-Walz ticket and their commitment to making America a safer place. But tonight, I want to speak specifically as a dual Israeli-American citizen. And as an Israeli, I know that my safety, my parents, my nephews, my aunts, my uncles, my friends' safety is tied with Palestinian safety. My people will be safe when there is a ceasefire, when this war finally ends, when the hostages return home, and when there are regional agreements that bring peace and true justice to our troubled region. Like many Israelis, we know that the reality on the ground is far more nuanced than what those who see the world as a binary us and them would have us believe. I have followed Vice President Harris for years now, and I've learned to really appreciate her ability to see complexity and to see nuance. I think that in Kamala Harris, we have someone who recognizes that the world is not just ones and zeros, and that there are many shades of gray, and that progress is found in a commitment to seeing and understanding the stories, the pain, and the hopes of various people. Now, as someone who both works in politics and is committed to repairing the world, I know that no political leader is perfect. But I do feel that Kamala Harris sees us, that she sees me. She sees the suffering my people went through. She saw and she spoke about the pain of Israeli women on October 7th. She sees my nephews who are growing up now with the trauma of war. And I also believe that she also sees our Palestinian neighbors who live not even 5 minutes drive from my nephews. She sees the pain of those women. She sees the pain and the trauma of those children. She knows that there is more that we share and more that all of these children deserve than that separates us. And that is the kind of leader that I want. What I need, what my family in Israel needs, is someone who can see and can honor complexity, someone who can accept it, and that based on their values, these values that we share, which are rooted in a commitment to a better world, will seek creative solutions, even when everything feels helpless. I believe that is something that Kamala Harris and her team have. Whereas her opponent keeps seeking just how to sow divisions, hatred, and violence between our communities, both here in this country and around the world. And that's why I'm very proud to support Kamala Harris for president. And I hope that you will join me. Talk to your families, talk to your friends, volunteer with the campaign or an organization that you are aligned with, and help us get out the vote and make history in November. Thank you.
And thank you so much. And we are moving now to another good friend in New York, Esther. Replace. You are, Esther.
Here I am. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. My name is Esther Sperber. I want to say we've heard a lot of things. I think we've heard about Harris's policies. We've heard about her personality. We've heard a lot about Israel. I want to speak to those who are not typically Republican voters, but are feeling a little bit anxious this time about supporting a Democrat and about supporting the Harris-Walz ticket. And I want to try to convince you that this is the right thing to do, and to convince you so much that you go and talk to your friends and family, because talking to people that you know is really the best way to shift people's opinion. So my name is Esther Sperber. I, like many people on this call, was born and raised in Israel. I grew up in Jerusalem. I'm the oldest of 10 siblings, and most of them are still there with lots and lots of nieces and nephews. After I did my national service and went to college at the Technion, I came to New York to do a master's, planning to stay for a year or two. That was in '97. So here we are. And I want to tell you, as I said, why I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris and Tilden Waltz, and why I feel confident that this is the right thing to do in this election. Since October 7th, I have been one of the main organizers in New York of the Hostages Family Forum. It's a group of volunteers that advocate for the release of the hostages through a deal, and running rallies, talking to diplomats, arranging meetings for the hostages' families with synagogues, with community centers, and with the elected officials. Through this work, I've seen firsthand the care, empathy, and commitment of President Biden and Vice President Harris to the hostages and to Israel. I know many of us feel shaken by the events of this last year. Israel, who we always trusted was a safe place, is under attack, and many worry about their safety here in the US as well. And I don't want to dismiss this. Bad things have happened and are still happening, and we don't really know what comes next. But I do believe that having a responsible, committed, empathetic, smart leader in the US is important for managing to get through these difficult times. And I believe that with Harris as our president, we can move forward and move safely. And I think about this and a few different things as kind of highlights of why I support her. One is, as many people said here, the commitment of the Biden-Harris presidency to Israel and to Israel's safety. They have been steadfast. You remember when Biden's first big message to Israel on October 10th, where he talked to Israel's other enemies and said, anyone thinking of taking advantage of this situation, I have one word: don't. And he has stood by that. But it wasn't just those words. It was also obviously the military protection that our current president and Harris, alongside with him, have given Israel, both in military aid and financial aid. But that's not all that we need. And diplomacy, I think, is a crucial thing to the safety of Israel and to the safety of the US. And that is something that I think we all know that the former President Trump was not very good at. I think diplomacy is what allowed the US to assist Israel on April 14th, when Iran shot hundreds of missiles towards Israel, and the alliance of the US, Israel, and the moderate Arab states in the region were able to destroy all of those missiles before they even arrived in Israel's airspace. I believe that Kamala Harris will continue these efforts, the commitment, the support, and the diplomacy to support Israel. I believe she's smart and reliable and law-abiding and competent. And I think, like many others said, she cares both about people and about policies. And when you think of her opponent, I think there's so much to worry about. And I want to just say two words about that. Yes, Trump has done a few things that may have been empowering to Israelis, but those two were done often as impulsive things and not as part of a big strategy, like moving the embassy to Jerusalem. It wasn't part of a grand plan for resolving the situation in the Middle East. Many of, I think 40 out of 44 cabinet members that had been in the Trump presidency are not endorsing him. Among them, security secretaries of defense, White House chief of staffs, and his own vice president. And a letter of 741 bipartisan former national security officials all endorsed Harris, calling Trump impulsive and ill-informed. And I think that is a real danger for the US, obviously, and for Israel and for the entire world. So join me in voting for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. But even more than that, this election is going to be close. So we need you all to join not only in your own vote, but in talking to people around you, encouraging them, assuring them that they shouldn't be worried, and making sure that Kamala Harris is elected president of the United States. Thank you.
So much. We're moving to Sharon in Rochester, and in the meanwhile, David is going to share some answers to many questions that are already in the chat. We prepared some document for that. So, Sharon, you're on. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for gathering all of us tonight. My name is Sharon Shafrir. I'm an American Israeli who has been living for the past 21 years in Rochester, New York. I was born and raised in Jerusalem to a very Zionist family that made Aliyah from South Africa. I've earned my bachelor's degree in Middle East Studies and Political Science from Bar-Ilan University. I worked as chief of staff and spokesperson for an Israeli Knesset member, and as the spokesperson of Misgav County, Northern Israel, before my husband, Shai, and I moved to Rochester in pursuit of higher education. I graduated Cornell University with a master's degree in communication, and together we are raising our 3 American Israeli children, Ivri, Yoav, and Dalia. I've been an active member of the Jewish community and in the diverse community in Greater Rochester since we moved here. I'm a civic engagement and nonprofit professional and have been engaged in local and international volunteer work to safeguard democracy, equal rights, inclusion, and accessibility. I support Kamala Harris' candidacy, and I will vote for her in these coming presidential elections because she truly cares about the future of Israel and its peoples. She shares the core values on which the state of Israel was established upon, and that she has the vision required to create partnerships in the Middle East with Israel on the path to realizing prosperity to the entire region and communities. But first and foremost, I'm a woman. And as a woman, a mother to a child with significant special needs. And as a professional parent advocate, I support Kamala Harris because unlike the other candidate, she will protect my rights and my daughter's rights to access reproductive health care and family planning resources. She will defend women's natural right to make independent decisions about their bodies and families, and will work towards securing women's rights and human rights for generations across the country. Join me in supporting the Harris-Walz ticket this November. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, so much. And we are moving now to Ronit, who is a good friend, and she is in Florida. And Ronit is super optimistic. And you need to unmute, hold on.
Hi, good evening. So I wrote something in English. Of course, my Hebrew is better than English, so I gave what I wrote to Emma, my granddaughter. She's 17 years old, and her English is first language. She lives in Tel Aviv, and she checked my English, and she said it's 100% good. she fixed something small. So I was born, I think, in the most beautiful city by name, which is Petah Tikva, which is the entrance of hope. My name is Ronit Bachar. I'm a poet writer in Hebrew. My books were published by the best publisher in Israel, and few poems in English were published by a literature magazine in Stanford University. I am a second generation to the Holocaust. My mother was a Holocaust survivor and unable to overcome her memories. As a result, she was an abusive mom, especially to me and other family members. That's why most of my writing is about this subject. This made me a warrior for justice. I was a partner in establishing a democratic Jewish Arab school in Jaffa and an art teacher in a high school with special needs kids in Tel Aviv. I volunteer as a staging location director for Obama campaign for over 2 months and Clinton campaign too. I have a son, 2 granddaughters, a grandson, and other family members in Israel. As an intellectual woman, I feel obligated to vote for Kamala Harris, who expressed everything I believe in and want to happen in this world. Strengthening weak groups, war against racism and anti-Semitism, protection of women's rights, LGBTQ, MAD+, communities and minorities in general, strengthening the middle class and finding creative solutions to conflicts in the world that are not true wars. I support 2-state solution, and I really don't want to talk about her opponent. Also, I want to mention that 2 of my classmates from elementary school and some high school were murdered in Kibbutz Be'eri. I have a friend in Gaza. He's a poet writer. His name is Nasser. I'm very happy he's alive. And I hope really will work. And Kamala, I believe she will work hard to create a peace and a solution for the Middle East. I'm going to vote for her. I'm sure 100% that she's going to win. She and Walls are my heroes now. And as I said, I don't want to talk about the other guy. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Ronit, so much. And we are now moving to Dr. Ron Cohen, who is actually also in Florida right now. Hold on. Right. Hi, Ron. Let me just unmute you. Hold on. Here you go. You're on.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And good evening, everyone. Just to be brief, and I hope to the point, I'm an American Israeli. My mother was born in Jerusalem in 1928 and raised there, became a violinist, and eventually moved to the US, where she met my father. My father was in the medical corps in World War II and was at Dachau concentration camp right after its liberation, and became a court psychiatrist to certify the Nazis as competent to serve, to be on trial. So I grew up deeply steeped in the history of Israel, with many visits, working on kibbutzim in Israel. I speak the language. I went to a Hebrew day school for 12 years in New York, and am deeply, deeply rooted in both the US and in Israel, with a long history of having studied the history and the culture, and of course being with my beloved relatives and friends in Israel, and having taken my daughters there. I am an entrepreneur, a biotech entrepreneur. I'm originally a physician. I started a company out of my second bedroom called Accorda, which eventually developed a number of drugs to help people with MS and Parkinson's, and I was CEO of that company for 30 years. What I've learned about leadership in that process is that leaders, the best leaders, the real leaders, think about the people they are leading far more than they ever think about themselves. And they think about what is best for the people they are leading. And when I look at this election, I see the usual flack that's thrown up in terms of disinformation. Today, I just saw about a 10-page treatise on Kamala Harris and all of the detailed reasons why I shouldn't vote for her. But I am voting for her. And I'm voting for her because I've been observing her. And I learned as a CEO of my company to observe people very closely as a scientist and as a human being to see what they were made of and what they could contribute and how I could help them contribute. And when I look at Kamala Harris, I see what we would call a mensch. I see a real human being, someone who cares, someone who understands what it means to lead people for the benefit of the whole, not for herself. When I look at Donald Trump, I see the opposite. I see, honestly, what we would call in Hebrew a pera adam. He is diagnosable, he is not trustworthy, and the mistake I think many people make is they listen to what he says, but he says what is expedient in that second for himself and for no one else, and all of his behaviors, all of the betrayals of everyone, eventually, whoever follows him, it tells you what we could expect. Whereas with Kamala Harris, if you just saw the debate and you knew nothing else about her, and you saw that debate, you saw what you needed to see. You saw someone who was self-confident, who knew what it is she wanted to accomplish on behalf of the people, pressing the buttons on this man who lost complete control of himself, which is the opposite of what a leader does. So as a Jew, as a half Israeli, as someone who cares deeply about the existence and survival and thriving of Israel, I don't see a choice here. It has to be Kamala Harris.
Ron, thank you so much. And we are moving, last but not least, to Shir. And Shir is calling us from UC Irvine. Shir, let me change your spotlight. Hi, Shir. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shir. I was born in Israel and I moved to California when I was 9. And now I'm a third-year mechanical engineering student at UC Irvine. I am voting for Kamala Harris because she believes in our future, not just her own. As an Israeli American and a college student, I constantly hear people claim that she will be the downfall of Israel. Frankly, that sickens me. For the first time, we have an administration, Biden-Harris, that brings nuance to issues that are so deeply personal to me. They have shown that you can stand proudly with Israel, support its right to exist and defend itself, be a Zionist, and condemn the horrific acts of Hamas, all while being able to criticize Israeli government's actions when necessary and acknowledge the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. This is the type of leadership we need, one that can feel everybody's pain and stand for humanity, not just political agendas. As a Jewish leader on campus, I've seen firsthand how universities handle protests. Some take an aggressive approach, bringing in state guards, police, and some choose dialogue, trying to find common ground. Let me tell you, campuses that chose to react without empathy and with aggression only saw increased violence on campus, and the problem didn't just go away like they hoped. I believe if Donald Trump is reelected, the war will not end, the hostages won't come home, Israel's democracy will continue to erode. Why? Because Trump has shown time and time again that he has no room for empathy or humanity in his policies or actions, and acts in a way that only benefits himself. I want a leader that not only understands that not only one side is in pain and can finally end this war and bring our hostages home. And that is Vice President Harris. I cannot imagine 4 more years under someone who only cares about his own future, especially when his decisions today will affect my future for decades to come. If Trump wins, the majority of the Supreme Court will be Trump appointed, the same Supreme Court that stripped away the rights of every woman in America by overturning Roe v. Wade. This cannot be our future. Like Vice President Harris says, we aren't going back. Harris Walls is our future for change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shir. You're amazing. I'm going to, before we close the call, and we are actually really on time, which is pretty amazing for Israelis, but we're also Israeli Americans. Let me just replace spotlights. Perfect. I'm also going to bring David. We have tons of questions coming in the chat, and I want to add David to the spotlight for a second, just to tell us a little bit more about the tools that we prepared.
Thank you, Phil. And I think having our last speaker be our youngest is pretty special. That shows the direction that we're going in both countries. That's my editorial. So I think that there are 200 people here who are ready to charge the hill, and we're getting all these messages. Tell us, how do we answer this question? What about the folks who say Trump's been good for Israel? Fortunately, these are all questions that we've thought about and heard and anticipated, and we'll share in an FAQ, and as well as links of where you can use that in addition to your own networks and families, and however you can contribute. We'll share out opportunities to use those. But we felt that the endorsements here are important because when you talk with people, there are two pieces. I mean, anybody can write out these, well, why this, why not that? But what's really important here is that everybody who's spoken, and most of the people on the call, have skin in the game. We're not saying this is an academic exercise. You have people whose kids are in the army, whose families endured the worst of October 7th, and on and on. So as you're conveying that, as you're doing your own outreach and your own engagement, it's both pieces of those. It's not just, here's what we see academically, but the people who are affected by it believe it. So we'll try to do everything with that two-part message. We will be sending out an FAQ, especially on, I think the most common one was, people say Trump is good for Israel, and what about, how he was tough on Iran? The answers are not too difficult when you dig just, a tiny bit below the surface. So I know we're right at time, and Offir has some calls to action. But we will be getting that out for you to share widely. And based on what we hear from you and others, please give us feedback, questions that you're in the field. We'll turn that around and get answers to the key objections, the key obstacles that you're facing, as quickly as we can, since we're in a sprint. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So we're going to close the call. I mean, with 43 days till election day, our efforts are focused specifically on reaching voters in swing states who are inclined to vote for Harris, but want to make sure that she will be good for Israel. So we are going to share the Israeli Americans for Kamala content online. There is a QR code that is being shared with the link tree. Follow us on social media. And actually even send us your questions on Twitter so we can actually answer them and get more exposure. Please amplify by bringing influential community members and Jewish voters to upcoming events to hear directly from Israelis who are deeply familiar with these issues and are directly impacted by what happens in Israel. Connect with us, connect us and all the members here that volunteered to speak with congregation, organization, or groups that would like to hear directly from us, Israeli Americans. And stay tuned for an invitation for a call ahead of Rosh Hashanah, which we will try to make our best to do there. And also connect with your friends, Israeli Americans who actually live in Israel. They can also help a lot. I want to thank again to David and to Kathy and to all the speakers that joined us today for this first national call of endorsement by Israeli Americans for Kamala. A good night, and let's make sure we vote and we bring everyone to vote because this is really a crucial elections for all of us and for Israel as well. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you.